I sold 2 companies at the age of 25, and I'm about to tell you my story. What I did right, what I did wrong, and everything in between. So I do not have a background in entrepreneurship or anything like that. I actually grew up playing sports. So after a failed college athlete career, I fell into entrepreneurship really to just try to figure out a way to make some money. I tried the drop shipping, and I tried Forex trading, and I wrote 2 books, and I started a little bracelet business. I got into flipping stuff from Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and eventually I flipped my way all the way to getting a little camera. So this is actually my first camera. I think you can get it online now for about $200. I think I bought it for $250. Now, I was a terrible photographer, but I actually fell in love with it. I started shooting everything completely for free. I just had a blast, and it brought me as much joy as I had playing sports, which is something that I had never had before. Fast forward, I'm back in Jacksonville, which is the town that I grew up in, but I get asked to go and shoot a high school football game. So I go out to the high school football game, and I'm on the field shooting, and the opposing team asked me who I'm shooting for, what media publication. So this is before all the photographers that are now, on the sidelines. It was basically me and the news. So I start getting pictures for both teams, and then the following week I go out and shoot another game, and I ended up charging $1 for every photo I take. And for me, that was absolutely awesome. I was making like $50 a game. $50 is a lot for a broke 20-year-old kid. So I start photographing everything. Every day for a year straight, I promise you guys, I am DMing every single coach, every trainer. I'm doing free shoot after free shoot because I realized something at 20 years old that most people don't realize for their entire lives. And that was the power of connections. And that's what I really want to hit on right now. I realized that I could spend just my time as a 20-year-old, which if I went to go get a job, that was going to be 15, maybe $20 an hour. And I could go and use that and put myself into places with a camera to be introduced to people that had a little bit of a higher status. And my hopes was that if I went out and did free work and I got to know people and I met new people, well, the free work could hopefully turn into paid work. I tried to meet as many people as possible, and somehow or another, by the end of the first football season I had ever shot, I was shooting the final game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So me and my friend Eli, we go out there to shoot the game, and we by far had the worst cameras out there, but we had an absolute blast. And then we went and each one of us, we DM'd every single player, every single coach, every single trainer, anybody that was on the field that we could find. We DM'd them all their photos so that they could have to try to even build more connections. So to recap on this lessons, I started with absolutely no talent, no connections, and very, very bad equipment. The only resource that I had at this time was my time. So if you're starting from zero, understand that that is your advantage, that you can go out and do the work that nobody else wants to do. I could have waited by my phone and waited for teams to call me, but instead what I would do is I would print out fake media passes just to get me into the games, which by the way, I wouldn't recommend, but I will say it did work for me. So if you're starting from nothing, use what you got and don't use what you don't got as an excuse. It makes sense in my head. I don't know if it makes sense for you guys. So I'm actually starting to think that I can make this a side hustle. And at the end of 2019, I decided to go and create my own LLC, and I call it Varnes Media Company. Very official, very established. We move into 2020, and you guys obviously remember what happens in 2020. Everything completely shuts down. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm in Florida, so the rules just for some reason didn't apply to us. So we were still doing our own thing, but that gave me a whole year to essentially work for free. And so I spent all of 2019, all of 2020 just building connections, and I was able to charge dirt cheap prices because like the economy was at a standstill. But I had a lot of first times in 2020. This was the first time that I had ever charged $100 for a photo shoot. This was the first time that I had ever done a $500 project. This was my first wedding that I had ever shot. It was in a trailer park, and I got paid $250, and she was 8 months pregnant, but it counts. And guys, I promise you, ask anybody who was around me in that time. I worked every single day through this part-time business. I made $8,000, which between going to school full-time, working part-time, and trying to build this little photography business, I was living life. I was as busy as ever, but I was as happy as ever. It was just so much fun for me. But this is where it gets interesting, where the second business comes in and we really start to explode. So I'm trying to meet people left and right. And again, the way that I'm meeting people is by DMing them on Instagram, offering them like a free photo shoot, a free content shoot. Because for me, if it only costs me an hour of my time basically to meet a new connection that could lead to potentially more work, I'm going to do that time and time again. But I believe that the more action that you take, the more opportunities that you're going to get. You know, a great example of shooting for the Jaguars was, yes, it was entirely lucky. The very first year I had ever shot a football game, by the end of the season, I'm shooting an NFL game. That's just unheard of. But it wasn't lucky the fact that I tried to make it a point to introduce myself to everyone on those high school fields. So in my opinion, luck and effort just seem to run side by side. But a similar situation happens to me here. I do some free work for a chef, and he introduces me to another chef, and they come to me and they say, we have an organically grown Facebook group of chefs and they're scattered all over the country, and we want to make money with it, and do you want to be a part of it? Because all we're doing now is selling t-shirts and knives. So this opportunity falls in my lap because I was young and hungry, and you know, they kind of saw something in me. And again, I'm gonna leave everybody's names kind of a secret because of how the story ends. We'll get there. But we start working on a new business, and eventually we come to this idea. I swear that's everyone's idea, but we were gonna do it. It's gonna work. It's gonna be awesome. Didn't work. But one day we get a text in the group. All right, Paul, so remember what happened in 2020. Everybody leaves the food industry, which means now we have an opportunity because the market is needing work bad. So there are 4 partners, and I am essentially the COO of the company. I am 22 years old. We don't have any systems in place, but a contract falls to us immediately for 70 chefs. So we go from 0 to 70 in one day. Guys, this gets absolutely crazy. So we had to figure out how to get these people in the Facebook group to the location in like 3 days. I worked, I think, for 24 hours straight, and you know, we're booking flights and Ubers, and I'm calling hotels, and we are trying to vet people as quickly as possible, and we have men on the ground. And I just remember being 22 years old at this point, and I have no idea what I'm doing. We are just figuring it out. So obviously issues are gonna arise. We have to get these people on planes to get to the location. We have no money. So then we have to go back to the company that we signed the contract with and say, is there any way that you can send us like 20 grand to get these people out there? And sure enough, they actually did, which we were very surprised. And on that day, 20 grand was just deposited into the accounts, and that was actually the most money I had ever seen. It was such a crazy thought that like someone would just like nonchalantly be like, yeah, here you go, here's $20,000, do what you want. So we could take a breath. We may actually be able to do this. Which, by the way, I take this opportunity to quit school, which looking back now, my parents, who I love to death, I have no idea what they were thinking. They didn't know what I was doing. They just knew that I somehow got involved with this startup company. And so sorry, Mom and Dad. I know I caused you guys a lot of stress in that time, most likely. So somehow per diems were implemented into the contract when we signed it, which what a per diem is basically a daily pay until you get to payroll. At this point, we have about 60 people working at a time. But we have an issue with our processing systems, because if you go from 0 to like a $50,000 payroll, it looks a little suspicious. And so it was gonna take a few weeks to get everything set in place, but we need our people paid like today. So we are sending things through Cash App and Venmo and Zelle and PayPal. We are trying everything. On top of that, we have these per diems to pay, which is in total about $3,600 every single day. I am sending things personally $3,600 per day. And I feel like the IRS agent, like I wonder what they were thinking, because they were like, okay, this kid has no money and suddenly he's sending over 3 grand every single day to random people across the country that he has never met and has no connections to. I have no idea how we skated by that one. And besides some nightmare accounting at the end of the year, we figured it out and we got through it. You know, bad things just come in threes. We find out on a Friday that on Monday we can no longer use the hotel shuttle, which that means that either we need to find transportation or we're gonna have to start putting all these people in Ubers to send them to the work. Now, our contract was in Chicago. We have one shot to do this. I fly up to Chicago with an amazing friend of mine who I roped into helping out along the way. And my goal is I need to figure out a way to go rent some vans. And I don't think anything's gonna follow me now, which is why I'm okay with telling you this, was, you have to be 25 to rent vehicles. Well, I'm 22. So my idea is to go to the sketchiest part of Chicago and just hope they don't check. And then drive the buses through downtown Chicago traffic, a city I've never been before, as well as I've never driven vans before. So here's my lesson here. One of your greatest advantages that you'll ever have in life is having a extremely high stress tolerance. That now for the rest of my life, I'm able to compare whatever I have going on in life. And it's, and I've gone through some difficult stuff. But I'm able to compare it to basically that first 2 weeks, and it looks like sunshine and rainbows. But in all seriousness, I don't know what life is going to bring you. I can guarantee though that you're going to go through some hard times, and if you are able to get through those hard times, if you're able to take it and push through it, you're going to be able to use that for the rest of your life. You may be able to look to other people like you know what you're doing and you may have all the confidence in the world. But if you truly want to get over any sort of self-doubt or self-worth, it's not through telling other people. It's by having these wins that you can lean on. I'm able to lean on myself because I can look back at the hard times and look at what I was able to overcome and the wins that I was able to make from my past, which gives me now confidence. This part of the story, I'm going to kind of skim through because it's in the gray, but it's a pretty important part. We end up making it through the contract. It was absolutely insane. We are tallying up the numbers, my partner and I, and the numbers aren't looking correct. And again, it's still kind of in the gray exactly what happened, but basically one of the partners stole all the money. All of it. And you're talking, this is a lot of money. And I'm not going to get into specifics of how he did it, but basically through the entire contract, he was just siphoning stuff off. Yeah, it sucks. It really does. So I've taken you from the very beginning all the way to this point, which this is when things start, this is when the cool part happens. 2022 made 2023 in which, I sold both businesses. So in the year of 2022, it was just insane. This was probably the hardest I'd ever worked in a year. But this is when things really exploded. I know you guys forgot about Varnes Media, but I'm running both companies at once. And the majority of friends and family and anybody that followed me on social media, they knew me as a photographer. And that's kind of what, to this day, I've stayed as. The majority didn't even know what Chef on the Fly even was. In this time frame, we're essentially turning Chef on the Fly into a multi-7-figure company. We do about $3 million over the course of 20 months. We have infrastructure and we have an office that's, located out of Orlando. When we're working in restaurants and the PGA and going to the Phoenix Open, and we're working in colleges and oil rigs, and it was just such an absolutely amazing time. And again, I want to take a second to take this moment to where we talked about the stresses and everything at the beginning, was that this was a all hands on deck, that it was not just me. There were multiple people, there were partners, there were other partners in this situation that were working absolutely just as hard and were right in the thick of it right there with me. But Chef on the Fly was becoming a pretty name brand around the industry. While this is going on, I'm building Varnes Media, and now it's a six-figure company. And I have multiple employees, and we go from from basically my bedroom to a smaller warehouse studio to eventually a much larger studio right next to the town center of Jacksonville. That's 2,000 square feet that has office space and a full studio in the back. And we've turned from just photography and basically me in fully functioning content creation social media company. And we are actually developing our name in the Jacksonville area. 2022 was an absolute crazy year. It was just a really significant year in my life, to where it was kind of the make it or break it year for both businesses, but we were able to actually do it. So my lesson for this chapter is you brute force your way to the success. That for a lot of people, they're saying, I want to find this perfect business and the perfect business model. And I promise you, that first business that you decide to start and kind of the first roads that you go down is not going to be the perfect business. Alex Hormozi, he talks about having this ignorance debt that you're going to have to pay down over time. And 2021 was about going through those mistakes and learning from them. And 2022 was about taking from what I've learned and implementing it and actually putting in the work. This chapter in my life, it wasn't necessarily about figuring out the perfect strategy for anything. The entire strategy for both businesses was put your head down and work harder than everybody else. That was the strategy. So I turned 24 in 2023 and I'm 25 now. Looking back, I am honestly so grateful to have gone through what I went through in those first few years. That I'm never gonna work as hard as I did in those first few years of building everything. I literally got stress ulcers during this time period. It was like I took it to a pretty big extreme, and I'm not gonna say I regret that. I've seen a lot of people that kind of make it through and they say, oh, you need to take care of your body and you need to make sure that you look out for the important things in life. But that's when they've already kind of gotten through that phase. I think in order to get to that phase of, being able to be financially free and, doing kind of what you want and taking care of your health, if you're starting at zero, there's got to be a little segment in there. There's got to be this time period to where it's just a straight growth stage to where you don't care about anything else. So by May of 2023, both companies have been built and they're growing steadily. And in pure honesty, I am trying to juggle both companies as best as possible as they're both growing and being successful. And then in early April, we were approached by a larger staffing company to be acquired. I think it was the right decision. That I feel like my time at Chef on the Fly had kind of ran its course and we had built it into a success. And on May 1st of 2023, we sold Chef on the Fly. And the way that the purchase agreement went was that we signed the papers, they deposited the money, and I never touched that business ever again. So now I'm 24 and I've sold my first company and I have another company that's growing and is getting more and more successful. But I am learning through YouTube and trial and error. But my goal was to get Varnes Media to a 7-figure marketing company in the next 3 years. And I mean, it was gonna be a big goal, but I really felt that I could do it. But in July of 2023, just a few months later, we're moving in the right direction, but I'm telling you, I'm running into wall after wall. You're trying to build a company and you're building something that you never had before. And it's funny how God works, man, I remember talking to multiple people and saying, I wish I could have shadowed or even done just I'll go work for free or do anything with other companies that are at the scale that I want to be at, just to see how they run, just to see how they operate. I don't have any mentors. I learned from YouTube. That's quite literally where I learned from everything, from Varnes Media to Chef on the Fly. I mean, literally typing in on YouTube how to be a COO of a staffing company, but I never had actual business mentors. And sure enough, I'm invited onto a TV show one day, and I get introduced to the company that I ended up selling Varnes Media to, and they had worked with over 1,000 brands over the last 20 years. I would be acquired, and I would become the VP of social media and photography, and you know, there are some pretty big plans in the future, and I was going to be a pretty big piece to that. It was a really amazing offer, and I had a really big decision to make. But you know, after a lot of thought, I really felt like it was going to be the right move. So on September 1st, 2023, I sold Varnes Media. So what am I doing now? I am working with a team of amazing people, and I'm learning and growing each and every day. My goal, honestly, is that I'm just a few steps ahead of you and you're able to learn a little bit. The reason I started filming videos was because I wish I had this back in 2019 when I first got started. And my hope is that this can be a roadmap for someone else who can hopefully learn from the many mistakes that I have made and continue to make. So if you guys got value from this, please like and subscribe, and I will see you later.